Hello, everyone. Hi, thank you so much for coming here today and for supporting female artists. Thank you, Uzbekistan Pavilion, Uzbekistan National Pavilion at the Venice Biennale for hosting us and for supporting female artists. I will start by introducing our lovely speakers. So on my left, Catherine Hunt, a co-founder of WAAW London and a big art patron. Robin Hunter Blake, a photographer and filmmaker. Diana Graviner, who is an amazing artist and a creator of a Procreate project. First one in Britain and maybe in the world, I'm not sure, but you'll tell us more about it. And Charlotte Bonham-Carter, who is an independent researcher and writer and a lecturer at Central St. Martin's. Thank you very much for coming. And Charlotte, if you don't mind, we will start the talk with you.
Is that working? Yes. Okay, thanks. It's good to be here. You wanted me to say a little bit about the situation with women artists, is that right? So I will use the term women artists, which is maybe a more inclusive term, and I think appropriate for this discussion. That's the term I like to use. So the situation with women artists is that they are underrepresented in the art world. This is something that has been the subject of interest in recent years, starting about 10 years, well, it's always been of interest, but starting about 10 years ago, there was a report published by the East London Fawcett organization, which found that women in the art world were really vastly underrepresented in national collections, in terms of commercial gallery representation, and really at kind of all stages of progression through an artist's career. I've been involved in some research in this area as well, and what we have found is that women actually outnumber men when they study art. So this is an interesting statistic. It's fairly consistent that about 65% of people studying art for their GCSEs and at undergraduate level in the UK are women. But what we find is that by the time you get to sort of major milestones of an artist's career, including representation in a national collection, that number drops significantly. So something like 5% of historical artists in the Tate's collection are women, and only, I think it's 36% in the Tate's contemporary collection, so that's artists born after 1965, are women. And what I always say alongside this statistic is it's not hard to find women artists, okay? So that's something that we need to keep in mind. In terms of this discussion, I think it's interesting or important to look at the different experiences of women. So something that we have been looking at over the years is how women, black and brown women, women with disabilities, women have different experiences and face different obstacles because of those experiences. We also know that the pandemic hit women particularly hard. Women, in many cases, bore the brunt of childcare and home responsibilities, and their mental health suffered because of that. So things are improving, and there's a lot of good news, and it's great that we're having discussions like this. But I think it's really important that we continue to raise this issue and think about the role of women in the art world.
Diana, would you like to contribute with your experience as an artist, as a mother, and also tell us more about your amazing project, Procreate, please?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I just wanted to say that we are in Italy. We are hosted at Uzbekistan Pavilion, but we are bringing here our experience from the UK. And so if any one of you actually has any knowledge to share, any experience that wants to share from their own perspective and cultural background, then it's very much welcome. It's not a one-way conversation. I'm here because I founded an arts organization in the UK. I'm originally from Italy. I arrived in the UK 9 years ago. As an immigrant, I was pregnant. And I've realized soon enough that the positive burst of creativity and the positive effect that pregnancy and motherhood brings into a life of a creative is not very much discussed. And also after that, it was the reality crashed on me quite hard when I realized that there wasn't a system, an organization that really lifted up the artist and really valorized his experience and really supported artists through this major life-changing experience that is becoming a mother and a parent. So I've decided to create that arts organization from scratch. And it has been 9 years now. It is growing very slowly with a lot of efforts and fights constantly, because we're fighting not just the lack of representation. That lack of representation is a mirror to the lack of systems and infrastructures that allow people to continue working and making art. And so when we look at the representation and numbers when it comes to art sales as well, both in the public and in the private sector, we look at the same operational mistakes that are made. So we look at the CV of an artist rather than looking at their work. We are looking at that gap in the CV, but nobody's really asking why that gap is there. And a lot of the times that gap is there because people who decide to have children, they're just forgotten and left behind for a number of years. If they don't have the opportunity to have a continuity with a network within the art world, if they don't have a studio space where they can practice, if they don't have enough money to pay for that studio space, to pay for childcare. And so this is where I come in with the work with Procreate Project, and that's what we're trying to shift. We're trying to create platforms and infrastructures that can really allow artists not to be forgotten and left behind, where they have a place to continue making, to continue being visible, and where they don't have to compromise. They can practice as parents and they can practice as artists.
No, the project is quite incredible. I think when I found out about it, I was taken aback that nothing like this exists. So basically, Diana provides help for artists who had female artists with young children to be able to come into work and have their children with them there, right?
Yeah, that's one of the platforms. So after 9 years, we have a number of platforms that provide either exhibition opportunities, residencies, cash prize. We also combine interdisciplinary conferences where we bring together midwifery, academia, and the art world. We commission new work, so we finance the creation of new works. And then, yes, the Mother House Studios, which is one of the main platforms that we run, and it's an artist studio model with integrated childcare, where children are welcome in the working space?
So as far as I understand, and from my research, there is no childcare support for female artists because they're all self-employed. And how I understand it and see it is that we need policy changes in order to shift the situation. I mean, I think it looks very positive. The future looks positive, even with the Venice Biennale. Out of how many 120-something artists, only 21 are men this year, which is a complete reverse of the norm. Usually it's the other way around. And I don't know, Catherine, with you, did you notice a positive movement with your work as an art patron? Or do you think it's just a trend that is coming through for a couple of years and then it will be back to normal middle-aged white men conquering the world?
No, I mean, I've noticed definitely women having more of a voice now. We're being heard, equality's really being pushed. You know, the power of the woman, the matriarchal society, it's been there for years. It's just, now's our time again to shine. And actually, there's so much talent out there. People are opening their eyes. I don't know whether it's because of social media. You know, people have been at home and seeing the frustration of, you know, not being able to actually interact. But women are proactive, can multitask, and be, you know, in the home, look after a family, and create. So there's more of an element of appreciation, I think, from those around them. And perhaps through the darkness of, you know, the last few years, that's been an inspiration to create such incredible things. Yeah, I mean, I've been really impressed by the kind of the global movement to support more female artists. And obviously our small movement with Women Artists Art Week in London this past year has definitely given those creatives that maybe didn't necessarily, you know, tick all the right boxes, had the gaps on the CV, they've been able to, you know, actually interact, break down those boundaries, and actually, you know, have a voice and feel the support to approach galleries and institutions and collectors. So I'm hoping that this is going to be the you know, the good trajectory for the next few years. The only way is up.
The only way is up. And there are a lot of actually museums now that are selling works by male artists in order to buy works by female artists. So, Robin, you as a male artist, as an accomplished male artist, do you feel some sort of unfairness in the way that world is changing, or do you feel the opposite because your mother was a very creative person herself and growing up you saw her struggles? If you could share with us, please.
I think what's amazing now is programs like Procreate are happening. You know, my mum didn't have that support as a contemporary dancer, and strangely, you know, well, not strangely, it's such a female-dominated medium, but at the same time, it's the men who are actually succeeding, and this is something that she was explaining to me the other day. So having that infrastructure, like a program like Procreate, is so positive. You know, maybe I feel her career would have flourished a lot more if programs such as Procreate were around, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when she was really dominating, sort of, or at the sort of peak of a dancer's career. Yeah, I think it's a massively positive thing. I think it's good that the world is changing towards this way. And what's been very nice is that out of my class of graduates from UAL, the people who have done the best, was the women from the class. And it's so positive to see that. And you know, it's been an absolute pleasure to sort of be behind Women Artists Art Week in London and sort of see all of that and see all of this new work that I otherwise wouldn't have seen because of the landscape that it is. So having such a platform is stunning.
Well, thank you, and it's very brave of you to be here, surrounded by us. Tyrese is an incredible artist that we met at the Somerset House. She's a resident at the Somerset House Studios. We saw your work. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So what I want to ask you is your experience as a female artist, and tell us more about the diversity in the art world, because that's also is quite a huge issue, an elephant in the room that I think we should be comfortable talking about.
So yeah, hi, I'm Tyrese Holder, and yeah, I'm an artist, and my specialism is in textiles. I'm also a poet, and I do community arts work, so I do workshops with young people. And I would say my experience as being a female artist, but also like a black woman as well, is that I feel like I've had to kind of work kind of twice as hard to kind of be recognized as a woman, but also as a black woman. And I also do find that it is something where I think having to kind of explain my experience before kind of my work was understood, I found was a big issue, especially with like going to art school. So when I'll go to crit, people can have critical conversations like straight about the work, but I feel like for me, a lot of my time will be taken up by explaining the context behind it and things that I feel like, is quite given, and maybe like within my community is quite given. So I feel like it kind of dampened my kind of learning experience. I also find that kind of accessing resources for myself and to develop my practice has been quite difficult in a sense where I kind of wrote my dissertation about how textiles functions as poetic language, the heal trauma within black women. I went to a specialist textiles library and I couldn't find one book about Caribbean textiles, and I couldn't find one book about Caribbean women in textiles. And I think a lot of even just learning about women that kind of predecessed me, I find hard to kind of access in a way. So I find that just in navigating, I think there's certain things I feel like the art world does need to be more diversified, but I think it needs to be honestly done in that way. As what does tend to happen is this kind of feeling of when I am kind of put into spaces, is that am I put into that space because you actually value what I'm doing, or are you putting me into that space because you want me to be that token? And I think that's really important for it to kind of be kind of genuine. And yeah, I find that there's a lot of kind of women artists, and I'm going to speak specifically to kind of like black women kind of doing textiles and like black women artists that I find only kind of later kind of getting their flowers. For example, Sonia Boyce this year, I've got the Golden Lion, and etc. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that I feel like if they were kind of given a lot earlier, just make my experience kind of a lot easier. So yeah.
But also that's your struggles and your experience is what makes your work more special and more complex and more beautiful, and that's what stands out, I think, as well as it brings its complications and difficulties in your career. But you have a partnership with Adidas, which is quite exciting. So could you tell us more about that? Because I saw some photographs, and just for my own curiosity.
Yeah, sure. So I applied to be part of, it's called the Young Creators Network, which is a network that is partnered with Adidas and WAAW Magazine. And WAAW Mag is a magazine that has been pioneered to kind of showcase emerging creators. So I was one of 20 part of the cohort. And within that, we kind of get kind of like guidance, industry support, but also opportunity to kind of branch out in our kind of creative fields. So two things that I've done kind of recently with them is do some styling in the Adidas stores. So I did one in the Carnaby store and incorporated my own pieces and the new Pride collection. So that was in June, July. I kind of did the takeover and styled that. And I recently did one for Carnival. And I think it's really important kind of doing those takeovers and like, incorporating my own pieces to be able to kind of integrate my culture and integrate yeah, like my knowledge. And yeah, I think kind of impacting the brand in a way that can, when people look in and look at them, like, oh, I can see myself in that, and I think that was really important for me to do. So yeah.
Also in the UK, we have, I think, about more than 70%, Charlotte, if I'm wrong, please correct me, of graduates from art schools are women. And I think only 10% are represented in, or continue their careers as artists and are represented by big galleries and auction houses. So you said that in your university, Robin, you had more talented and amazing sort of artists were women that you know. Do you know anything about their career and whether or not they actually succeeded?
There was a fantastic photographer called Naomi who was stunning work and made it out, and she's now at the RCA doing a fantastic master's. The work is stunning. And another girl, Nina, they really sort of came forward, but yeah, just seeing them progress was made it all worth it, I think. I don't know. Like, sorry.
And also the other thing that really kind of annoys me in the art world is not getting paid at all. Artists are not getting paid. You go for an exhibition, you exhibit your work, but you're not paid. You're kind of hoping for somebody to notice you, whether it's a big gallery or collector. Does it work the same for you, or what's your experience, Diana? I don't know. Is it just me?
My experience was pretty much like I just hustled. If someone, I don't know, I just would do anything that I could to keep buying film, keep buying chemistry, keep buying everything I needed to set up my darkroom. If someone wanted me to, do their event or anything that I needed to photograph, and I mean, there was like one point where I was definitely like working like 6 jobs to try and like fund my own darkroom. But yeah, I mean, that was my experience. And then yeah, it's that hope that someone's going to come and be that collector, I guess. That things, you can orchestrate things as well. Like you can put yourself out there. Really, don't be afraid to stick your neck out. I think that was what I realized. Definitely.
And you, Diana?
Well, talking from my own personal artistic practice, I work in performance, so it works slightly differently. In terms of payment, there is still definitely an issue with underpaying artists in general, and even big institution not really reflecting their status in the amount of support and fees that they pay with artists. This is definitely something that is still needs to be addressed. I think that, I don't know, when it comes to career, there is a bigger question for me. It's like, what does really success mean? Or when we're talking about people are interested in women artists, who are we really talking about? And I think that if we try to shift a little bit the way that we see the artist as a status, but we see it more as a practice, and we see more realities, also grassroots realities, smaller realities that might not be the Biennale or might not be the Tate or the big institution in the UK, we might be able to find ways to provide more sustainabilities for artists. There is this impossibility in achieving the status of a successful artist because there are so many things about the system of the art world that still sticks to the capitalistic patriarchal society and dynamics that we are just entrenched with when we work. So I think that if we integrate the idea of success and practice under a different type of point of view, then we might find that the more realities and more platforms can be created, and that can offer more fees and sustainability for a larger number of artists, not just the ones that get on the big walls. That's what I think.
But also, I think the more female artists we see on those big walls, the more credibility female artists in general get, and the more patronships they get, the more financing they get, and that's where also the success of female artists in general comes in, is to have more well-known, well-paid female artists that the world knows about. Yes, please.
Just kind of adding on to that point of pay, I think, especially for women, and I myself struggle with this about navigating it, because I think women kind of under that patriarchy have been conditioned to kind of give to or be taken from in a way. So I feel like when it comes to things like pay and having to ask for pay and like kind of stand up and kind of challenge things, I think there can be difficulties around that in the fear of kind of losing the position that you're in, and it kind of in the fear of, just not wanting to, just not wanting to disrupt, cause too much disruption, for example. I feel like we're kind of conditioned just to kind of be silent and just take what's given to you, and that's kind of a privilege in a way. So I feel like to kind of combat that, I think unraveling that thought process and kind of unraveling those ideas that are kind of rooted in patriarchy, that are rooted in patriarchy and capitalist patriarchy, I think would hopefully, fingers crossed, get women paid a lot more.
While we're doing the week of WAAW London in June, we met few artists. Some are very young, like Lydia, who said to us very clear that I don't want to have a child for as long as possible because I want to succeed as an artist. She's a sculptor. And there are a lot of artists like that we met that was quite heartbreaking to hear. There's, like, for example, I'm much older than you are. I had a child, one. I don't think two I can manage because of the career, but thankfully I have some kind of financial backing. I have a supportive husband, friends, network that I can rely on, but then it completely deletes all of those artists who don't have that can no longer go on with their careers because they want to have a child. And you're quite young, maybe you have not thought about it yet, but what are your thoughts for your future family or not?
I am young, but no, I have thought about a family, and things like raising a family is something that I want to do, and that's just because of my own values and like what I want to achieve in life. I do think that there is, from that, for example, conversations like with my friends, think about, what age would you like to have your first child? Some want to put it a lot later because they're like, I don't want it to impact my career. And you find that it's Serena Williams, for example, is a good example, having a child and being like, I want to stop my career because I want to be a mother, and those two things can't exist. I think it's kind of unfortunate in a way that women have to do that, in the sense where we kind of have to pause our careers, but men don't have to do that in the same way all the time, I would say. I think for me personally, I'm a big believer that I'll be on the path that I'm meant to be on the path of, and I kind of leave it up to like God and the universe. So if I had a child tomorrow, then I'll have a child tomorrow, and maybe what I thought maybe being an artist in an artist's career, maybe I have to go somewhere else. But I think it would be nice to kind of know that all women can kind of be supported in like motherhood and be supported in like kind of raising a family, and not have to kind of give up things in which to do that, I think. So.
Yeah, there is that very famous comment by Tracy Emin when she was asked whether or not she knows any famous artists who are parents, and she said, oh yes, I do know, and all of them are men. And she made a decision not to have a child and have her career. Does it stand on your way, Diana, having a kid and progressing with your career?
Not mine. I think having a child made me the artist and the mover, creator that I'm today. It just gave me much more self-awareness and thrive. I do understand Tracy Amin as well as Marina Abramovic, and I do get put these statements forward a lot of the times. I have nothing against them. I love them both. I think they're just telling the truth of what's their experience, and you can't deny anyone's experience. They're just, those statements are a reflection of what we are discussing here today, of the lack of system and infrastructures that can really support artists when and if they decide to have a child. I think that in my personal experience, I've decided to move away or try to change what are the boxes that we need to fit in to be cool in the art world. And so I will bring my child with me most of the time. I'm a single parent too. Israel there now, playing. For me, it's really important that he witness me, not just in the domestic space, but in the working space. Under a creative life, while I'm creating, while I'm talking, I think it makes the change that we want to see in the future, the children witnessing their mothers and parents in different context, and definitely in a working and creative context. So I've decided to do things differently, and I'm trying to make that possible for other people too. So that people that do not decide to have children, then they are very welcome to, to take that path. But that people that decide to do have them, they can also have a choice. And I think choice is what we're aiming towards.
Yeah, it's about equal opportunities, I think. That's the whole sort of topic, and that's what we're trying to achieve, is not to suppress male artists, but mostly to have equal opportunities. But there's still a very, very long way to go, in my opinion. But what is the answer? I want to know. How do we change it? I know you said to lower the standards of female artists, as in not to aim for very high sales, but to make it more accessible to majority of artists, and have support and have programs that will support them. What else can we do, and what is it that we're asking for? What's the answer? How do we want to achieve it? I don't know if you have any ideas, Charlotte. You must have some ideas.
Well, I think this question of success is a really important one, and I think it's a good point to raise that many of our ideas about success are based on kind of capitalistic notions of productivity, often at the expense of kind of human experience and health and wellness. And I think the question of equality maybe isn't quite right. The more I've sort of researched and looked into this, I tend to use the word equity, which is that people may be given the same opportunities, but some people, because of different life experiences, may need an additional set of tools in order to access those equal opportunities. So again, when we think about the kind of intersectional experiences of women artists, so artists from different socioeconomic classes, black and brown artists, disabled artists, we all face different challenges and require different things of the system. So I think it's about getting away from this idea that there's a one solution, and instead thinking about a workplace that is perhaps flexible and adaptive to the differentiated human experience. That's what I would say. And that is maybe seen through the implementation of, structures that you've described, studios that you run, studios that, give more to enable women to participate in the same way that men do. Instead of assuming that everyone has the same needs to access a studio space, maybe just making it standard to say, what do you need, to access this space, rather than always putting the onus on people to ask when they don't kind of fit our idea of what's normal. There is no normal. And then I think beyond that, this question of, actually, I think it's about 65% in the UK of students studying art and design are women, and yes, it does drop off, not quite to 10%, but a little bit more than that, but when we get to gallery representation, I think it's looking at our institutions and looking at leadership. The institutions should reflect the practices and people they represent, so I think diverse leadership is very important. And this idea of content is also extremely important in the academic institution. So it's about kind of, I suppose, thinking of these questions kind of at all levels of that artistic experience.
Yeah, I think you've hit on a few points there. It's, from my perspective, seeing the struggle any decade. I've got a lot of older friends who've picked up a paintbrush and become artists that, as they retired, and actually then gone on to have a very successful career. But they've had, that the wisdom, I think, to ask for what they need, and ultimately opening an avenue where everybody can actually just say, right, this is what I need, this is what I want, and then that really leads to success, because it's ultimately you have that, that light to see what your future can hold. I mean, if there's any obstacle in any path, it's going to be a struggle. So yeah, I think dialogue is really, really important, having a voice, and I think that's possibly why we're feeling like the females are having more of a time, because you can have more of a dialogue, and we're feeling like now's our time to open that conversation. So yeah, I think it's really exciting, but I really don't know what the future will hold, but I do think support of a community is very important, whatever that family might, entail, single mothers, adoptive families, any kind of, artistic community. It's very much about what you need from other people. Some people work very well by themselves, I mean, and they don't need anything, but that's from my perspective, at least, as a somebody that tries to support artists where they can. But yeah, or just allowing them to have a conversation and a hug or anything so simple. It doesn't have to be money or materials, but anyway, there we go. Yeah.
Also, from my findings for my dissertation, which I found quite revealing, I discovered that a lot of men in creative industries have no idea that women are going through what they're going through. I'm not talking about gallery owners, I'm talking generally about artists or people who work in the industry. They were quite surprised that numbers are so low and the payment gap is so big, which was quite surprising. It wasn't that they were trying to suppress female artists, it was just that they had no idea that it's happening, and it affects the industry so much. Yes, so no, unless, do you have any questions from the crowd? No? Any questions from the speakers?
Yeah, I can say that it can be, as it's just another way to kind of give women a platform. This collective isn't just exclusive to women, it is like a mixture of men and women, and non-binary people also. But yeah, I think it's just an opportunity for, yeah, women to kind of get more of a platform and just to be recognized more, I would say. But I would say that within that, you know, being something like, for example, being like a commercial industry, there's still a thing to navigate within there. So, for example, in the same way, kind of like in the art world, you'd have to like think about navigating your pay and navigating the people as well. I think it's the same there. So I think, and especially when it comes to working more commercially, I think there's sometimes bigger, like same as opportunities to be exploited and kind of be unrecognized and things like that. So I think it has its pros and cons. But with most things, I think there's its pros and cons. But I would say kind of being with that and kind of having guidance. So kind of our kind of leader of WAAW is, her name's Elsie, and like she's kind of overseeing us. And she's a woman, and kind of the Adidas team, our kind of points of contact are also women. I find it very helpful being able to have kind of really transparent conversations and being able to ask questions and and kind of learn from their experience. So I think in that way it has been really positive for me. But I think if you didn't have that kind of backing and you just kind of got a job and just went into it, I think it's a lot harder to kind of maybe get some of the benefits. But yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your incredibly sort of diverse opinions and voices and sharing your story with us. And let's continue the conversation and push forward, and hopefully things will change. And in a couple of years, we can have the same conversation with more positive results and statistics. Yes, please.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a point just about thinking about how we can make things better in the future. And I think the biggest thing is just like more systems of care and just kind of looking after, just in general, looking after people. But I think health is the most important. Like if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to practice. And I think a lot of people, and I'll say a lot of women, can sacrifice their health and sacrifice their well-being in pursuit of wanting to be an artist, for example. And I think for me, it's very important kind of think about, I use the term like diffability instead of like disability, because I kind of like this idea of celebrating difference instead of lack in a way. But I would say there's like a lot of women's issues and a lot of women's health issues that are like late diagnosed or take longer to diagnose. And I myself have experience of that. And I think because of that, it kind of has repercussions into like the workspace. So I think I think a lot of things within the art world, like the healthcare system needs reforming, the education system needs reforming. I think that will kind of have a knock-on effect as to how we can just enjoy practicing as an artist and kind of reap the benefits of that. So I kind of wanted to bring awareness to that.
Also mental health. Mental health has been quite an issue, and I think being a creative person, you're more susceptible to mental health issues from what I know, and again, from what I have experienced. So thank you for that. I think health is number one, and that gives us joy and ability to do what we want to do. And this is something we need to keep in mind, first of all. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Thank you.